Piers Morgan had Nick Fuentes on after flirting with the idea for weeks, and it was definitely more contentious than how Tucker Carlson, or quite frankly, anyone else handled an interview with Nick Fuentes. Jake, what are your 2 cents? What are you expecting?
Look, I mean, we haven't had Fuentes on either, but this whole not talking to each other is silly. So do do I like that Piers Morgan had him on? Sure. Let's have that conversation. Let's expose the ideas we don't agree with, which we're going to talk about here. We're allowed to agree with people who generally uh, we are very much in disagreement with on other issues. Let's just have that conversation. So let's watch these clips here and have an adult talk about it.
All right, folks, buckle up. We're diving headfirst into a clip that's got more red flags than a communist party. Piers Morgan, bless his heart, decided to give Nick Fuentes a platform. And let me tell you, it was a train wreck of epic proportions. But here's the thing. Sometimes you gotta let these folks talk to expose their sheer absurdity of their ideas. Today, we're not just watching, we're dissecting. We're going to hit the pause button on some of the most jaw-dropping, head-scratching moments from this interview. We're going to call out the logic gymnastics, the thinly veiled prejudice, and the utter lack of self-awareness that seems to be the hallmark of these kinds of conversations. Get ready to laugh, get ready to cringe, and most importantly, get ready to think critically about what you're hearing. Let's roll the tape and let's find out the real truth.
So Fuentes gets a lot of attention for his comments and his takes on U.S. support for Israel, and they did get into that discussion about halfway through the nearly 2-hour-long interview. But since everyone's going to be focusing on that, and we have covered that before in other contexts, I wanted to focus on other elements of this conversation that I thought were interesting and somewhat surprising. So Piers Morgan began the interview by reciting what Fuentes said about his own father and whether his father's views of the world have contributed to Fuentes's worldview. Let's take a look.
You talked about your father, Bill Fuentes, and how he wouldn't take the family, including you, to certain restaurants because he believed they were associated with African Americans. We would be deciding where to go to eat, you said. What are we going to do for dinner tonight? It was a running joke. Me and my sister would say Applebee's, and my dad would say we would never eat at Applebee's. Not in a million years should you be caught dead, Fuentes said about Applebee's. Go to a different restaurant, a local restaurant, no Applebee's, no Red Lobster. That is commonly known as black fare. Do you think you grew up in a racist environment, that your father was inherently racist, and that thought process moved to you?
Well, I would say it's a new low. I've been attacked for being a racist many times, but to attack my father, to attack my parents based on anecdotes, I would say that's sort of a new low.
Hang on, it's your anecdote.
A new low, he says? A new low? To ask about the origins of your worldview, especially when those origins involve your father explicitly saying he won't eat at a certain restaurant because they're commonly known as black? Give me a break. This isn't an attack. It's called journalism. It's called asking a follow-up question when someone reveals something utterly bizarre about their upbringing. It's the classic deflection playbook. Accuse the questioner of being unfair, or going too far, or attacking a loved one who isn't here to defend himself. Oh, the humanity. Meanwhile, Fuentes is perfectly capable of defending himself, his own views, which, let's be honest, are far more concerning than his dad's dinner preferences. But the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, does it? When your foundational experiences include racial segregation at the dinner table, it's not a leap to connect those dots to a worldview that's, well, let's just say problematic. This isn't about attacking parents. It's about understanding the roots of an ideology. If your dad taught you that certain restaurants were off limits because of race, that's not just an antidote, that's a formative experience. It shapes how you see the world, how you interact with different groups, and it certainly can contribute to a racially charged perspective. To pretend otherwise is utterly crazy and naive and intentionally deceptive. It's like saying, my dad taught me that the sky is green, but that has absolutely no bearing on why I insist on wearing sunglasses indoors. Come on, we're not stupid. The real new low is trying to gaslight an audience into thinking a perfectly reasonable question about a personal history is some kind of moral outrage. He's setting the stage for victimhood. And frankly, it's flat out pathetic.
Yeah, but he's not here to defend himself.
You are. It's a reasonable question.
Yeah, no, like I said, I think everybody knows what that is, but I'll address it. I'll engage with it and I'll defend my father from the charge of racism.
Sure.
No, my parents are not racist and they've never been racist. I'll tell you about my parents. They used to have a school in Chicago in the South Loop where they instructed people on how to shoot firearms. It was a security school and most of the clients were black.
So he's going to answer a little more in the next clip, but I wanted to show Piers Morgan's question and ask you, Cenk, whether you think that was a fair question to ask of Nick Fuentes.
Look, I wouldn't have gone in that direction. I think it's superfluous. I don't really care what his dad thinks. On the other hand, I'm also not outraged by the question. So what? Answer the question, right? And he did. But look, here's an anecdote I've told on the show, and then let's decide if that's racist, right? So they mentioned Red Lobster. Look, I don't know that Red Lobster is particularly black. I don't know what that means, right? But I have talked. First of all, Red Lobster has excellent cheese biscuits, and you should go.
No,
but I have
Red Lobster is delicious. No, hold on.
Yeah.
Like that is, I'm offended by the notion that you shouldn't eat it. Like we're not at all, sponsored by Red Lobster. This is an organic plug, I guess. I love Red Lobster. It is delicious. Like,
yeah. But I've kidded around about. Sometimes I'll go to a diner or a restaurant, and if I see either cops or black people there, I think nailed it because they actually
the food's gonna be good.
Okay, hold the phone. This is where the wheels really start to come off the wagon. The host, in a bizarre attempt to defend Fuentes' father, offers his own funny little antidote about judging restaurants based on whether he sees cops or black people there or whoever. Let me just say this. If your barometer for good food is cops or black people, you might want to reevaluate your culinary experience and maybe a few other things. This isn't a funny little antidote, folks. It's a perfect example of trying to normalize a deeply ingrained, unconsciously stereotype that people have on their kids. It's like saying, oh, I always know a car is fast if it's red. Just a funny little observation. No, that's a stereotype. And when you apply it to people, it's not just funny. It's not funny at all, in fact. It's a casual reinforcement of racially profiling, even if the intent is supposed to be benign. And then he tries to pivot, saying, it doesn't mean I'm racist against white people and non-cops. Oh, the mental gymnastics he's playing here? Nobody's saying you're racist against white people for that. But you are absolutely playing into racial stereotypes. And it's completely not needed and completely unnecessary. Why even bring it up? It adds nothing to the conversation except for to make the host sound utterly tone deaf, I should say, and frankly, a bit foolish. This is exactly the kind of intellectual laziness that allows more extreme views to fester. When you can't even articulate why judging a restaurant by the race of its patrons is problematic, you're basically giving a tactic nod to the very prejudice you claim you're against. It's not about being outraged by the question or superficial details. It's about recognizing that some antidotes reveal a little more about your own bias than you might intend. And guess what? Red Lobster's cheddar biscuits are delicious, and their clientele have absolutely nothing to do with it. Get a grip, will you?
It was going to be good, right?
Oh yeah.
So, but that's a funny little anecdote. It doesn't mean that I'm racist against white people and non-cops. So that's why, like, this is a little bit of a waste of time. We should get to Nick Fuentes' opinions. I don't mean us. I mean Piers starting with that. It seems needlessly hostile.
I agree. I think opening with a question about Nick Fuentes' dad is kind of weird, especially considering the fact that Nick Fuentes streams for hours on end each day. And if you want to, actually focus on what Nick Fuentes himself has said about his own views, that would be more interesting. But nonetheless, he did answer the question. Let's go to his answer and then we'll move on.
What my parents would say if they were here is that for many, many years, the older generations of Black people were very respectful, very humble, very decent. In fact, my grandma used to have an anecdote. She grew up in a lot of dysfunction. Her mother was mentally ill, and they would be having dinner in the projects, and there'd be so much chaos and dysfunction and disagreement and fighting. And she would look across the way out the window at a Black family in the other apartment, and they'd be holding hands around the table saying grace. And this is sort of the culture that used to prevail. But now what you have in the city is that there's no accountability for the Black people. And now Chicago has become a complete dump because these teenagers go out and they take over the city. They call them teen takeovers. That's the euphemism for it. They're teenagers, but they all come from the same neighborhood. They drive up there and they mug people and attack people and they destroy cars and destroy shops.
Okay, so that now we're starting to get into, the territory of what Nick Fuentes actually thinks about the Black community, and he's gonna, weigh in on that a lot more in upcoming clips, including I think one of the most devastating clips that Piers Morgan played of Nick Fuentes in one of his rants. But before we get to that, Cenk, what are your thoughts on how he answered that?
Yeah, look, I feel like we're constantly stuck in the middle in this way. So are there crime issues in some of the bigger cities? Yeah. By the way, crime's gotten much better in the last year and a half or so. But if you want to address that, no problem. If you want to make it racial, what's the point? What does it solve? Right. So are there issues that affect people in lower socioeconomic classes that affect both Blacks, whites, Latinos the same? Yes. And blaming it on one particular race is not that helpful at all. And there he was talking about what was wrong with his own culture, and then he shifts to what's now wrong with Black culture. But I don't think those are the issue at all. I think class is the issue in that particular case. And so I think he's misdiagnosing the problem pretty significantly.
Yeah. Okay. So with that in mind, let's actually just go to the next clip because this is the one that, caught my attention the most.
They're always coming up with, no, it's not the Jews. No, it's not women. No, it's not Blacks. It's actually really complicated. No, it isn't at all. Jews are running society. Women need to shut the up. Blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part. And we would live in paradise. It's that simple.
It's that simple. Wow, I didn't know that. There you go, folks. He just told us it's that simple. He is screaming this from the rooftops. If you're wondering how far down the rabbit hole Nick Fuentes would go, well, you just heard it from his own mouth. Jews are running society. Women need to shut the fuck up. Blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part, and we would live in paradise. Wow, what a statement. Probably the dumbest statement I've ever heard, but it's a statement. This isn't just controversial. This is pure, unadulterated, hateful ideology. This isn't about misdiagnosing the problem or a class issue, as the previous commentator was trying to suggest. This is about blaming an entire group of people for problems and offering a horrific, simple, authoritarian solution. This isn't just a take. It's a blueprint for a huge, crazy, horrible nightmare. Think about what he's actually saying. The path to paradise involves mass incarceration based on race, silencing 50% of the population, and scapegoating an entire religious group who has already been persecuted many, many times for many, many years. This isn't just wrong, it's absolutely dangerous. This is the kind of rhetoric that has historically led to unspeakable atrocities. And the fact that he's saying it with such casual confidence and so simply is undeniably chilling. And then when Piers tries to get him to clarify, he doubles down like an idiot. That's all true. That's all true. Everything I said in that clip is true. Nick, you sound like a moron. It's not true. It's a hateful fantasy built on prejudice and ignorance. It's a desperate attempt to find an easy answer to a complex problem by pointing fingers at a race or a religion or a gender even. This isn't simple. This is just hateful, horrible reality that he has in his head. This is why we need to expose these ideas, not to give them legitimacy, but to show exactly how rotten they are at their very core. This isn't just about agreeing to disagree. This is about fundamental human decency and the values of our society. When someone openly advocates for the mass imprisonment of a racial group and the silencing of women, wow, you don't debate the nuance. You condone it? Period. That's not funny. And that can explain how he is.
Okay. Would you like to clarify what you meant there?
That's all true. That's 100% true. Everything I said in that clip is true.
Including that blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, all of them?
No, for the most part.
What does the most part mean? What percentage of American blacks would you like to see in prison?
Whatever the percentages of the murderers. I think it's 1 in 20 black men will commit a murder in their lifetime. So maybe let's say that 5%.
Oh, so you're talking about black people who murder people?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But you didn't say that.
That's
You
the
just
crime
said
problem.
blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part. You didn't clarify that you were talking about black murderers.
Right.
And there you have it, folks. A stark reminder that while freedom of speech is vital, it also means we have a responsibility to dissect and debunk the dangerous narratives that try to worm their way into public discourse. What Nick Fuentes just laid out isn't just an opinion. It's a dangerous ideology that seeks to divide, demonize, and ultimately destroy the fabric of our society. It's critical that we don't just passively consume these conversations. We need to be active participants in calling out bigotry, challenging logic, and standing firm against those who peddle these hateful terms as simple truths. We are here as a society because we are all the same and we all have air in our lungs and blood in our veins. Let's start treating each other like brothers and sisters. Thank you for watching and listening to our video. Please like and subscribe to our channel. We'll talk with you the next time we need to uncover the real truth.